1045 The Team, your home for New York sports. And, of course, we are lucky to be joined by our good friend Barry Abrams, host of the In the Gate podcast. Of course, you hear him talking about ponies on ESPN a lot, and he joins us now. Barry, were you shocked how dominant Justified was?
Not so much shocked how dominant he was, but when he was sitting just off the sixth fastest quarter mile in the history of the Derby and still pulled away from two pretty good opponents in Good Magic, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and Bluegrass winner, and Audible, winner of the Florida Derby, who I thought really could win the race. That was an amazing feat. They could have gone around that track again, and those guys still wouldn't have thought Justified.
So is the Curse of Apollo a real thing, or is Justified that good?
Well, the thing is, a lot of horsemen, I think, ostensibly felt that at some point that curse was going to be broken, simply because horses are trained differently today. Remember, when Apollo won that race, back in the 1880s, in the first decade of the Kentucky Derby, horses would run when at the age of 2, 10 times, 12 times. So him not having run as a 2-year-old was a very big deal back then. That's a huge amount of foundation under him that he, that he would not have had. Nowadays, horses run, I don't even know if they run 12 times in their entire careers. So it just stood to reason that at some point it was going to happen. And, hey, it's the same year that a 16-1 in the NCAA tournament, so it all makes sense.
Barry Abrams with us. Of course, you got to check out his podcast, In the Gate, host and producer for ESPN. Now, Barry, the story of the Derby that you were just most taken with that came to fruition besides Justify?
The rain. I couldn't believe how much rain they got because I was checking the weather even the day before. There's a particular weather website, which I'm not going to give publicity to necessarily, but that's pretty accurate. And it said 20% chance of rain, maybe showers. It certainly didn't say 3 inches of rain, the wettest Derby of all 144. I don't know how much it played into the outcome because Justify had run on a wet track in California in his debut, but it certainly was something you had to just visually pay attention to. It was some kind of spectacle, all those people wearing plastic ponchos.
Yeah, the rain was huge. I remember we spoke with you last year, and it was raining, and some thought that Always Dreaming did benefit a lot from that rain. You don't believe Justified did that much, but how about the other horses that finished second, third, Good Magic, Audible? Did they benefit because of the rain?
I don't know about benefit. They'd never run on an off surface. Justify had. That doesn't mean the other two couldn't. They just hadn't. We had no data on them. But I don't think the rain played a factor at all. What did play a factor was traffic. And, the most amazing part for Justify, and we were saying all week that the thing that could really get him beat was the gate break, coming out of the gate. If you watched the replays before you went back to partying, you saw that when the gate opened, it was like the Sea of Reeds parted for the Israelites going across Egypt. It was wide open, and if you saw Mike Smith at the end of the race, his white silks were completely clean. He just sashayed up, sat right off the leader, and as soon as they got to the first turn, I said, this race is over. I didn't care how fast they were going. It was over. Now, you contrast that with Mendelssohn, the European, who was the third betting choice in the race, though I didn't think he could actually win. But when the gate opened, he got slammed. It was bumper cars. He got hit by 2 horses to his right and basically threw in the towel. And the greatest jockey in the world, Ryan Moore, showed how great he is because he realized this horse had no chance and just wrapped up on him, and he finished way behind in last. That's a smart jockey, not a bad jockey. He's really smart. But he took the worst of it. My boy Jack got cut up. His legs were all cut up on Sunday morning from, horses clipping heels coming out of the gate and down this front straightaway the first time. So there was a lot of traffic trouble, but none of it for Justify. And that was the thing. We said all week, you never know, like Mike Tyson said, person does until he gets punched in the mouth. That horse never got touched. It was a workout for him, basically. Now, if you watch, say, NASCAR, you know there's every other track on the schedule, and then there's Talladega, the wild card, with pack racing, and anything can happen when those cars are 200 miles an hour, 6 inches away from one another. The Kentucky Derby is basically that for the Triple Crown. 20 horses, rodeo into the first turn. You never know what can happen. The Preakness is going to have fewer horses in it. The Belmont probably fewer than that, and a big, wide racetrack where there's plenty of room. So this was the one that Justify had to get through. Unless he beats himself, there should be no stopping him.
Barry Abrams with us right now. Okay, so when I was listening, I heard the rainy track, the bad traffic for the other horses. You seem to think that Justify is going to be fine at the Preakness.
Normally, Derby winners hold their form in the Preakness. Now, the exception was Always Dreaming last year, but like you alluded to earlier, I don't think Always Dreaming was a worthy winner of that race. He got a fortunate break by running down along the rail on a wet track that had been sealed down in the first three paths. And credit to John Velasquez's jockey that day for realizing it, because everyone else could have realized it and they didn't. But most of the time, even horses that are long shots who win the Kentucky Derby, like Mind That Bird in 2009, who was 50-1. He hadn't won anything really before then, and after the Preakness, he really didn't do very much at all. But in the Preakness, he ran a very close second to the great Rachel Alexandra, certainly a credible race. And so you normally see that, even though it's 2 weeks after the Derby and horses are not conditioned to run every 2 weeks. As unnatural as that is, Derby winners still do well. And certainly with this little pony, I can't see him at all faltering. Bob Baffert on Sunday morning said that he had, the horse ate up his feed Saturday night after the race, and that when Baffert went to check on him on Sunday morning, he had plenty of energy, but he didn't look tired at all. So I think if it's going to catch up to him, it might catch up in the Belmont, but I don't see it catching up in the Preakness. So we have a legitimate Triple Crown threat. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, this horse has run 4 times now. His debut, an allowance, the Santa Anita Derby, and the Kentucky Derby. And all 4 races, you know, because you're from Saratoga, that every horse in North America has a power rating, a speed figure that they get for every race they run. Every single one of this horse's races has been over 100 in the speed figure, which is astounding. I mean, 100 is about what you would get, a little over 100 for winning the Kentucky Derby. This horse got that on his debut and every race after. He did not regress, as horses typically do. They'll have a peak performance and then they'll fall back with a number that's lower. They won't run as well. This horse has been like a machine with 100 speed figures for each of his 4 races. And I don't think I've ever seen that before with that kind of consistency at that high a level. I don't think this horse can be stopped by anyone other than himself.
Barry Abrams, In the Gate podcast, ESPN.com. Nice enough to join us. And if it's cool with you, Barry, we're going to bother you right before the Preakness.
You know where to find me, gentlemen, anytime.